Right, everyone. So, welcome back to the Inherent Success podcast, where this is your guide to self discovery. We talk a little bit about business, relationships, mostly self discovery, and it's all based on transformational stories. And today, I'm really excited to have my good friend Chris Miles on the podcast. He is so amazing, and I can't wait to hear his story. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling good. I had a great day so far, and yeah, I'm super excited and staying in curiosity. So
Yes, awesome. Yeah, guys. So Chris is a good friend of mine. He was actually my coach in the workshop that I am currently in, which is ALA. And can't, like I said, I can't wait to hear his story. So Chris, let's take it back because, like I said, the podcast is mainly based on transformational stories, and everyone has a story, right? They have a story where it brought them to the person that they currently are today and how they were able to achieve their successes. So let's take it real back. Like, let's talk about little Chris and how was little Chris growing up, and where are you from? How was it growing up in your family?
yeah, yeah, little Chris. His name was Christopher at the time, and I grew up in California. I was born there, and then we almost immediately moved to Europe, to England, where my father's side of the family is. And then and then I went to Maryland and then California and pretty much moved every couple of years of my life. So my life consisted of a lot of cultural changes, a lot of letting go, a lot of starting new connections, new relationships. And one thing I always remember is just how much fun I had and how happy I was to be exploring and be be discovering new people, new things to do, new environments. I'm going from like the beach and this sort of like deserty feeling to this real suburban feeling. And my family was close. I have one brother, and my parents have always been the biggest mentors in my life. They showed me everything I know about generosity and what it is to be a good person and what it is to be disciplined and just like really like really allowing me to be the best version of myself and making it really fun. They're always very active like with me. So I'm very grateful for the way that was the way that it all went out, even though I had to move around so much.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because everyone's story is so different growing up. Like, for example, me, it was the complete opposite. Not a lot of children out there have support and role models and like good examples growing up. So for me, it was really difficult to find my way in life. So I had to do a lot of things myself and learn things myself. Basically, me and my siblings raised ourselves growing up. So that's awesome that you were able to have that support with your family and your parents. Now, let's bring it back a little more. So, how were you in school? Because a lot of, success stories that I hear, like entrepreneurs, they've struggled a lot in school. At least for me, I was not a school person. I did the bare minimum to get by. I was like, okay, D, yes, I pass. So so how
Yeah.
were so how were you as far as like your school setting? Were you always the type of person that just excelled really well, or you just knew right away that the academics thing was just not for you?
No, no. Okay. I like a detail that you threw in there. Like, okay, D, woo, I passed. It's like I looked at it the same way. It was like, am I going to pass this class or am I going to not pass it? The other thing I also looked at ever since I was in first grade is like what did I learn here in my own way and just like being like aware of what I was learning. Um, so no, I was not a slamming straight A student. I'd say I was a solid C. solid C's. I was all over the place with it. If I could figure
Better
out how
than
to make
me.
if I could figure out how to make the class fun, I would do better. If it wasn't fun, like let me do an example, history. I never liked history. Those I think I've consistently passed with like D's and C minuses. Um, yeah, so it's been a struggle, and I think a lot of the reason for it was every time I switched, the most the most amount of years I ever stayed in the school was 5 years, and that was in elementary school, first through fifth. Every year after that, I was a new student. Sixth, seventh, eighth, nine, 10, 11, every year, except for junior and senior year in high school. So with that, there's a lot of changes in the way the school system works and um, how people are taught and how we're told to think. And so not only was I switching my environment, but I'm also learning how to like think differently. So it was like, for example, um, some teachers would teach by us teaching the class. I'd have to stand up and learn how to teach a class when I was in California. Then suddenly that got taken away, and I was babied again, and things were very easy. But I had the skill of being able to um, stand up and speak in like sixth grade. So this diverse culture, it shook me up in terms of being consistent with like the grades, but it had some strength to it because of how different each system really is, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So, you know, I found the West Coast to be um, more productive overall than when I moved to the East Coast in New Jersey, I'd say.
And and with changing schools, how did that impact you? Changing schools all the time and just like always
Yeah,
changing your environment.
yeah. I'd say like changing schools and changing my environment. I come in as quiet. I don't want to disturb what's going on, and I turn into a very big observer. So I like to observe for about 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and what that looks like is me being more of an introvert, me being curious and like meeting people, and also like questioning who people are, questioning why someone is acting like the way they are. I remember ever since forever, Emma, I when I met my first school bully, which was fourth grade, and then I met another one in seventh grade. So these were like prominent, these were interesting points where I remember specifically thinking like, why is this okay? Like, why is this person like mean to my friend Kyle? And and like just I had to understand the reason why. And so I've always remembered that thought of like not being scared of it or not wanting more of it or ignoring it, but just like really questioning and like going and looking for the answers. And so um, yeah, being observant of like the way people are is something that I stepped into because it helped me understand things. And when I understand things, then that's how I gain my peace. And I could also teach to other people. So I was able to, I'm the older brother. Everything I learned, I got to help my younger brother out. I got to help my friends out and really just be like, um, understanding is where I gained my peace from. So I've always been really fascinated about like how people work. Oh, this guy's bullying this guy, and it's actually because his parents are like this and act this way at home. They're so mean to him. Damn. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I feel kind of bad for him. Let me go see if he's doing all right. Let me go see if he's. Let me go see if he wants this extra apple juice because like um, he probably has not had a great week compared to my week. I just went on a 4 mile run with my dad and my dog. So, yeah, I think sense of understanding brings sense of peace for sure. And just coming in with being observant.
That's interesting because not a lot of children think that way, being observant as to like, oh, why is this person acting this way and this sort of behavior? And it kind of like correlates with what you're currently doing now. So it's very fascinating. Did your parents teach you to be kind and to always like want be curious as to why other kids are acting a certain way? Like did they build that in you, or that was just like naturally like, oh, it's just consciously.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. It's like a yes and no part to that. It's like they I learned these things because of like their ways of being, their energy, their attitude. It was the only thing I knew. I mean, imagine you grow up and everything's butterflies and rainbows all the time, and then all of a sudden there's a really rainy day. There's like things are not butterflies and rainbows. Like there's a
Mm,
fight out at school. It shakes my world and creates a disturbance. It creates chaos and it creates questions. So me being a curious child, like I got to come home, um, I got to ask questions, and I'd always get answers. So I think it really comes up in the way of energy, and I would definitely get I would when I was acting up, I would definitely get
spanking.
disciplined. I would get disciplined for it. So yeah, I had a younger brother. I would get disciplined all the time for like not being nice to him. So it was very clear to me like what was okay and what was not okay, and like understanding like why it wasn't okay is like the biggest part of it. So one thing led to another, and um, if I ever got treated unfairly, like I would just be much quicker at understanding why it was, and either option one, letting it go, or option two, um, going and meeting that situation or person head on in a way that was like helpful for them too. Like it was like a win-win situation. Like, hey, I get you, and like so like you don't need to do this. And so yeah, I think I think there's something I think there's something there of like a seed that gets born when it comes to creating win-win mindsets and situations, or like the art of letting go, like the art of adaptability, and like allowing things to emotionally get felt by you, and then be able to process it in a way that you've learned or learned how to process, and then release it is a really strong growth path to be able um, to constantly be achieving happiness or achieving peace or take whatever it is out of it that you want. So
Yeah, it's the reason why I was asking that question is because it goes back to that theory of nature versus nurture. So it all comes down to your environment and how you're raised because growing up, your programming, it starts from the time that you're born all the way until, you're like basically 10 years old. And your environment is so important. So that's how I was like, it kind of, I thought about going back to what you were saying, that your parents are your role models and they were really great. And you had a good childhood and like you had really good examples growing up. So it comes down to like the example that was set in your home. So and then it's like vice versa. It's like, if you were growing up in a very dysfunctional home and you see peace, or you see somewhere else, like you think it's weird. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's not familiar. So like for example, like for me, like, growing up in that dysfunctional environment, I've always wanted to be seen, loved, and heard because I didn't have that nurturing aspect. So yeah, that makes sense that you were like that because of your upbringing and how your family was. So that makes a lot of sense.
hmm
So growing up and like going into high school and as you're getting older, when did you start exploring coaching? Like when was that pivotal moment for you that you're like, wow, I want to do this. This is my passion. This is my purpose.
yeah, for sure. When it was, I would say. Doo-doo-doo-doo. I think the mindset started before the decision actually comes in. So like I'm kind of asking myself like when was it where I like thoroughly enjoyed teaching people something that I understood? And then when was it that I actually like made that decision like okay, I want to be a coach. I think they're two. Can I answer it in like those two different ways?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It's your floor.
Okay, cool. So yeah, the when part comes in and the when part comes in the end of high school summer. It was like I was ready to be this new person. Um, New person. I'm going to get a degree. It's supposed to be the most important time ever. And I was really good at sports. And I was going to this new school and I was responsible for training some of the other freshmen who haven't had as much experience as me in rowing. And our coach was busy. And so um, I just remember being uh, so technical and so fulfilled when somebody would would learn something and they're enjoying their process of learning because of like a type of passion that I was sharing. And so, eventually rowing became not so passionate and I my coaching ability or my need to want to teach this like completely disappeared. So it was like the passion behind what I was doing is like the one thing that matters for sure. But yeah, when I was 19 years old, that was like when I really started to get fired up about showing people what it is that I knew, and whether that was lifting, um, whether that was rugby, whether that was like some other sport. So usually it always revolved around sports. The mindset coaching didn't come into play until I started getting into relationships that I really cared about. And it was like when relationships started really mattering to me, that's when the ability to communicate really effectively started to matter. And so this happened like definitely at the age of 22. Age 22 is like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to, um, to be the best version of myself that I can be. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to learn and understand my partner so that we can co-create things together and be really happy. That was like that was like the exact conversation going on in my head at 22.
I love that. No, that's interesting because well, I was 21 when I decided the same thing, like just wanting to change my life and work on myself and become a better version of myself. And that was a time where I was just like, okay, I want to be a coach and I get to help people. So I really love that. And yeah, the reason why I asked is because a lot of times, we don't really know what we want. Like we get to like a certain point in our lives where we're just like confused and we don't know what we want just yet. We want to create something, but then we just don't we haven't found that passion or that purpose yet. And most times it takes people like a difficult moment or like that very impactful pivotal moment in the sense of like, okay, something really happened to me or something's going on with me, or maybe you were in a bad relationship or just like anything in particular, like that can be that moment where you're like, okay, I get to turn my life around, I get to become a better person, I don't have to live this way, I'm tired of living this way. And that relates to fitness, that relates to business, just anything in your life. So I know you did
Hmm.
explain that your mindset changed, but what was, I guess, like, was there like a difficult time in your life or something that made you realize, like, okay, this is my path, this is where I want to go?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, that's a good question. So the thing that created the thing that created the ability to really change was what you just pointed out, which was making a decision about like what it was that I really wanted. So it's like, what is my vision? What is it that I really want? And then being able to identify it. And there's two things that really allow me to create allow me to create that decision. One is pain and the other one is pleasure. If there's like a lot of pleasure and I'm loving life, I want more of that and I'm asking myself those questions. If there's a lot of pain and I'm stuck and I'm like, wow, I don't want this at all, I'm also asking myself questions like, okay, what do I want? And so at this time, and when I was graduating from high school, it was pain. It was like, um, I don't like who I've been. I don't like the way that I've been showing up in school. I don't, um, I don't like the reputation that I have here. I'm super ready for fun. Like, let's let's create the biggest pivotable. Let's create the biggest pivot point, like right now in this moment. And it was that decision right there. So the opportunity was I went into an environment where I could choose that. Who do I want to be? How do I want to act? So hour one, day one, when I went to my new school, I had already made that decision. Wow, I'm not going to be an introvert anymore. Wow, I get really good grades. Damn, I'm really consistent and I'm really good at sports and like everyone knows me and I love bringing people together. It's so fun already. I was walking in with a giant smile on my face, like laughing, like, "Oh, what's your name? Who are you?" And so it was definitely the recognition of pain that the recognition of pain that helped me really decide what it was that I wanted.
So, what was that painful moment that inspired you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, for me, it was being misunderstood. It was that people didn't want me in their friend group because they thought I was not as competent or I was going to bring down their average score. So to me, it felt like it was like really far from the truth, and it just it sounded like this. It was like, oh, damn it, we have Chris. Like now our overall grade's going to be like at a lower average. This is like when we were in like a math class, junior year of high school. We're forming teams to be in like a competition together, and like I couldn't get on a team. I was excluded. It was like all of a sudden I'm like the anchor on people's ships. It was like a not a good feeling at all. And it did two things for me. One, it was a wake up call of like how I feel like I'm showing up in life. Like it was like half of my brain was like, yeah, you are an anchor. You're going to bring their score down. And it was a confirmation of 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 who I was being at that time. Um, And so that right there is like the exact feeling I needed to be able to make the decision to actually shift out of it. Like, how do I shift into like a more intelligent, more empowering, more fun, better person to be around so that I do get to be on these teams. And then the other half of that at that time, like in that moment, is that it was like denial. It was like, no, you must not know me, or you must not know me because the truth is I just hate math and I hate this class and I don't like you guys. Not so much the last one, but it was like you don't know me,
I don't
and
like you.
yeah, yeah, I don't like you. I'm not good at math, so like of course, like, but it was just this feeling of like misunderstood, like you're wrong, and I don't like that I'm not being seen for like the value that I am. So yeah, those are the two things, and you know that was one moment, but there's probably like 20 other moments in school that felt like really similar. So at the end of the day, like I had this belief that I wasn't good enough, and there'd just be these events that would affirm that. So um, yeah, these events were strong enough for me to be like not caring about school, like not showing up on time for classes, like being really careless, being extra goofy, like just like not being committed to what I am, because if I wasn't committed, then I'm screwing up, and if I'm screwing up, then at least that's my choice. Like I got to make that choice. So in an interesting like leveled up way, it was a way of being in control. So um yeah, it's interesting it's interesting the paths that I would take to be in control. And I think that's also an epic part of the journey that we're all on and the journey that I was on is like, what did I do to be in control as I was growing up? And looking back on it now, realizing like, wow, um, that's pretty crazy that I did that, but at least I learned, at least I became who I am today. So, yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately you turn that pain into power and you use it as fuel to and inspiration too, because people don't change through obligation, they change through inspiration. That is like a model that I have and I use all the time. And it's true. It's like what it's using those moments as like not to victimize yourself and not to oh I suck or whatever. It's just you use those moments as okay, this is what's going on, and I get to build my confidence, I get to learn in other areas, I get to you know develop and grow in different parts of my life. It's not like this moment is not going to define me. And not a lot of people see it that way. Typically the norm is just falling for it like as a victim, and then and this happens with kids too. Kids try so hard to fit in. I had that experience with my son when he was in sixth grade. They try so hard to fit in. They lose their shine, they lose their sparkle, they just want to be like everyone else and try to fit in and all these things. And I always say this is it's better to be loved for who you're not than who you are than loved for who you're not.
Ooh,
So
that's such a good one. Ooh, can you say that again? That was so
okay,
good.
so it's better to be loved for who you are than loved for who you're not. Did I say
Yeah.
that right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, better
Yeah.
to be
Wow.
loved for who you are than loved for who the person that you're not. Because it's true, and it's also better and healthy to create friendships and to be in a circle where you're appreciated, where you're loved, where you're seen. I don't want to say accepted because at the end of the day, that's like a tricky statement. To me, at the end of the day, you want to be around friends that hold you high. And if you're stuck a certain way in your life and you're not leveling up or you're not pushing yourself, I'd rather have friends. I don't want friends to accept me like that. I want friends to be like, "Hey Emma, what's up?" Like what are you going through? What are your plans for your life? Let's go, take action. It's better to have friends around you that are always motivating you in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think, that's a really good point because it made me it made me remember a time where I was recently thinking like, wow, if I got to speak to my younger self that was in high school, what I would tell him is trust your gut, trust your heart, and spend the time with the people who like want to spend time with you because they are your source of inspiration. I had this great group of friends growing up that would always be there and they'd always want to know like what I'm up to and um I kind of took it for granted for years. And then I even switched schools and like separated even more from them. And I spent so much time with them. They were great. And after I switched schools, that's when I realized I was like, wait, my friends that I just left are like so great to be around. Like that was the feeling of inspiration. And I think like it would be important to recognize that at the youngest age possible. So I was 18 when I realized that. And so I would have told myself at like 15. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard when you're a kid and you're growing up to find a positive group because, there's that level of maturity that hasn't been reached yet. So sometimes it's just difficult for kids to find like a good group of people and also to realize like to step into their own leadership and be leaders and not followers. I
Yeah.
That's something that I do my best to teach my son.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that kids they should also teach that in school as well, And to me, I think that's really important to be a leader, not a follower, and also be a good example in the group as well. So
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with you that that's not taught. In fact, what is taught is how to be a follower, and that's like very clear. So it's interesting. It would be very powerful to be able to teach your kids, teach your family when they come home from that environment that's teaching the following style of like how to actually be a leader. And it's like, cool. What are we what are we committed to today? What do you want? Okay, how do you get to act in order to be that way or in order to create that? And like constantly basically teaching rationale, responsibility. I mean, this is the most these are the most powerful things if you can learn them as a kid at a young age that set you up for success and set you up for impact for the rest of your life for sure. So, one thing that I learned from the common theme that I learned growing up from since I was 3 years old, holding up a crab on the fishing line was like just being such a deep thinker. Like, what will happen if I do this? What will happen if I throw him back in the water? What would happen if I let him pinch me? And just like exploring every possibility and opportunity. So I think that's such a great point is like how to teach how to teach leadership because we're definitely all the standard path is not to be a leader. It's to be a follower. Because if everybody was a leader, but they didn't get taught the moral compass, then they'd probably be leading in all sorts of directions. So there's definitely an order of importance when it comes to the leadership also. So
I
yeah,
agree.
that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's a whole. I was about to say the whole school system is like another hour, another hour of a podcast, separate interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So, Chris, let's explore a little bit on how you started your entrepreneurship journey, how you got into coaching, how did all of that got created?
Yeah, for sure. So it started when I made my decision to leave the place where I was for the last 7 years, which is New Jersey. And I moved to I moved from New Jersey to Arizona where there's just a lot more entrepreneurs out here. A lot less nine to fivers traveling, taking the train into the city. So environmental shift was a seed that got planted. And then I remember making my first big sale in real estate, just thinking like, wow, like anything is possible. And it sort of like heightened my ability to take risks and lowered the amount of fear of like money and like releasing this idea of money. Because in real estate, especially as a residential realtor, it's it's a situation that's not comfortable. And if you stay in fear, if I stay in fear and stay in scarcity, it'll it'll stop me from getting a sale. It'll stop me from using my advertising money to actually go and get that sale. And so, stepping into real estate was the first impactful thing I did once I came to Arizona to understand this relationship with money and scarcity and like what being an entrepreneur really is. I didn't really know what that was at the time. I just knew I wasn't getting paid by a salary. There was no guarantees. So, was I inspired at that time doing what I was doing? No. But that's when I started the entrepreneur journey, and it drastically changed every year. Every year, I think the first 4 years, if you ask this question to any entrepreneur, they'll give you such an awesome answer because I know those first 4 years are drastically different, and there's a lot of growth in that journey for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so dive a little bit deep into for your 4 years of growth after the real estate.
Okay. So year one was the flunk. It was like all ideas and
Well,
um,
sorry to cut you off, but the reason why I
yeah.
ask is because, as you know, like there are people that out there that want to start a business, and they think it's easy. Oh, okay, I'm going to do this
Okay.
to make money, you know? So it's like people don't understand how complex it is to start a business, to run it, to keep it going, and like to make money, keep it and grow it, continue to grow it. So just elaborate a little bit on that because people don't understand that there's a process. Everyone wants, I should have
Yeah.
sent you this reel today. Everyone wants the view, but they don't want to go through the climb to see the view. All right, guys, we'll get right back into the episode. I just wanted to take a quick break here to share with you guys that I do not make any money on this podcast. My goal and my purpose with Inherent Success is to be that guide for individuals in their self-discovery journey. So if you found any value in this episode, make sure to like, to subscribe, and if you know anyone that could benefit from the episode or the podcast overall, you can share with a friend as well. Now, let's get back into it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone wants the view, but they don't want to go through the climb to
yeah,
actually get that view for sure. So I think the process that people really need to understand is they need to get really clear on like what it is that they want, build their vision as best as they can, and realize that there's a ton of hard work that goes into it. When you're your own boss and you're your own leader, you have to wear, you have to get prepared to wear every single hat. You're your own marketer, you're your own mindset coach, you're your own parent, you're your own everything. Your own everything. So I think realizing that stepping into the game is the number one important thing so you don't set some unrealistic expectation to get disappointed by, but rather come in with a prepared mindset and expectations and then allow yourself to actually create intentions rather than expectations. So you get to actually step into like a point of responsibility and ownership. If you lost all the money you just created, like look at all the amazing ways that you're responsible for that instead of um, instead of doing the same thing but like a little bit differently or instead of feeling sorry for yourself. So it's a really really long journey that people need to understand. Yes, people get lucky and like you can shoot your shot in the dark with drop shipping and get lucky, but that luck will run out. So like technically there is no getting lucky. You have to learn the steps. You have to learn what it actually feels like to fall flat on your face and feel a lot of defeat or pain or discomfort. And you have to learn the feeling of what it is like to put your hand back on the ground, put one knee up off the ground, and stand up using all your strength and understand that emotional feeling of standing up and repeating it. So you need, this is a requirement. This is a requirement in the entrepreneur world to actually emotionally understand that feeling. You don't have to be able to teach it to other people. You just have to understand what it takes so that when you're presented with the right opportunity, that you use the things that you learned to think and act and feel in the right way to create that result of that vision, that result that's going to create the action, or the action that's going to create that result that's in line with that vision. So
yeah,
I would say that's the spark notes on getting started. So for me, it was I had my things in place, but I was missing the inspiration aspect. I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was in it for the money. And then I got some inspiration because I brought in the things I cared about. I brought in friends. I brought in people who I really wanted to work with, and um, I brought in their like-minded ways. A positive, really positive work culture, uh, being very team-oriented and empowering ourselves rather than comparing, rather than being in competition. And because I went through this leadership program, I understand what it meant to be all in on one thing and be okay taking large risks and being really comfortable with the discomfort. And so that allowed me to go in and run my first wellness company. And this is a calcium company called Coral LLC, and it was based in Nevada. I picked up all my things. I went with my brother, my dog, all my stuff, and I moved to a different state. like without even questioning it. It was like, this is what I'm doing. This is my passion. I've already came from real estate. Like this is the thing that was missing. Boom, gone. So that was year two. That was year two, 2.5, where it was like taking risks became easier, but the experience of standing back up after I tripped, like that wasn't there. So it's one layer at a time. So the ingredients that are necessary are falling down and like standing back up is understanding like how to really get inspired and like following that inspiration. And then a lot of it is the technical stuff like team building or like delegating tasks. Delegating tasks would be delegated by things that don't involve other people these days. But getting all those moving parts like really running is the trick in the first few years for sure.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway for me of everything that you said is just being willing to take risks, being extremely brave and courageous, and understanding that it's not like a get rich quick type of deal because initially what people expect is just that instant gratification. And when you expect that instant gratification and you fail, then you're like, "Oh my god, this sucks, I quit." So
Mm,
it takes a certain mindset to run a business, to be an entrepreneur, because it's not easy. I've done it firsthand. I've witnessed it, and it's a lot of work. And the first couple, like you really don't see any income like until 2 or 3 years later. And like you said, some people are lucky and they make money quickly, but that just that luck instantly goes away really quick, like you said. And it's better to go in it being open, trusting the process, and just being open to that, to possibilities, yes, but also to that delayed gratification, because in the delayed gratification you also build character. It builds tough skin,
yeah,
you build character, you become equipped for any other bullshit that comes your way. So it's like if something fails, you're like, okay, that's fine, let's go, like let's go back, let's do this again.
yeah,
So yeah, I love that a lot. And so it was the first 4 years, and right now you have a coaching business, which is the React coaching program. That's your coaching practice. So tell us a
yeah,
little bit about that.
yeah. React. So the React program is a system built for coaches to follow. Um, and there's a lot of different coaching styles because each each person is different. Every coach is different. Every coach has a different outlook and different skills. And so there are unlimited, so many different ways to actually be able to communicate something and to be able to coach somebody. And so following a system and following a structure is really, really, really important. And the first time I got introduced to a framework and a system that worked, it was like mind blowing. Like my thought was like, wow, this is duplicatable and repeatable and improvable. So let me do all those things. Let me duplicate it, repeat it, and improve it. And so I want nothing more in the world to create, help people who want to create more impact. How do I get more leaders to get more optimized to be able to create more leaders? And so that's what this is built for. Um, it's built for the people that would come in and use it are the people who are looking to level up their levels of emotional intelligence, conscious awareness. Really, like, how do I get onto the best track possible for me to actually succeed in life in the way that I want? What is the unique track that is built for me that will get me there? And so, um, yeah, so this program is made up of a framework that actually gets people to set their goal from like the highest way of being that they can be at. So not from this limited way of like, hey, what's your goal today? Hey, nice to meet you. Like, what's your goal? Hey, we've been friends for 5 years, but like, what are your goals? But it's like to first really understand yourself and understand like why it is that you want the things that you want and why it is that you think that you can't get them or can't get them fast enough and to actually begin to have a new level of understanding on these new obstacles that you may or may not have known that they were even there, and really get over that first, then you can now have this clarity and this vision and this ability to set maybe not a new goal, but also a very high goal, and because you're also going to be achieving it in a new way that you haven't been used to doing in terms of mindset and actions. So it's really exciting to be able to watch people come in, set something that seems really exciting, but then they have all these demons and all the blockages and all the obstacles of like what's not getting them there, and then to have a process to actually identify and remove those obstacles, turn them into strengths, to be able to get to this once crazy dream idea in this new way that was really unfamiliar by building new habits. So um, it takes a desire and it takes accountability. So desire and accountability is the ways that this system works. And so I've always been passionate about getting people to be the best version of themselves, because I believe that all people are good or have good intentions. And even people who have done things that are wrong are acting from a place of innocence, because we were all born the same way. We were all born innocent and we were born free. We only had two fears: fear of loud noises and fear of falling. And ever since we're born into this world, we're constantly building up ways to protect ourselves from the pain that we experience, whether it was a loud noise, whether it was someone yelling at us, whatever it was. There's constantly walls going up. So to be able to understand these things it gets to be like really fun. It's really exciting. Like, it's really fun and exciting working with yourself and like learning new things about yourself. And it's really fun to do that when you're not by yourself, as you probably know. And so, like, a question that I love to like point out to listeners and viewers is like, isn't it interesting how people who seem to be in self development or like working on themselves or like reading all these self help books, like, why do they seem so like lit up? Like, why do they seem so happy? Like, why is their energy positive? Like, what book did they read? Or like, what did they learn? And so it's like, notice how that's a common factor in growth and in leveling yourself up, is like, it's fun and it's exciting. So the reason why it's fun and exciting is because that's where like the love lies. That's where your heart is. Like, that's where humanity is. So to be able to create a system where it creates more of an impact is really the amazing thing that gets to happen here.
It's fun and exciting if you're doing the work, because there's a
Mm.
difference between self development and self awareness. So you can read all the books, you can read, that's how I was for like the first maybe 5 years of me and my self discovery. And I was reading all the books, I was listening. Well, back then it was YouTube. It was just YouTube, Jim Ron, Eric Thomas. And this was before like the podcast era came out. And it was like all
Yeah.
the books and all of the things, but I was not embodying it. So coaching, I love what you've created, because coaching programs really do work as long as you're doing the work yourself, because you can get all these tools, you can have this toolbox, but if you're not using your toolbox, the tools are in the toolbox, then you're just, I don't know, I don't know what's the right term for that, but you're just like doing it, like you're not really doing it, you're just like absorbing, but you're not like really putting it into practice. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You have some sort of obstacle that's keeping you from actually doing the work or being what you're learning about. I noticed there's the point of the React program is the result of it is you get to master your reactions, because you gain the ability to choose your reactions with massive intention. So that's where the name comes from. And I like what you said about like the struggle with embodying it, because um, there's more than one way to, you'll notice that there's two common ways for people to react to like when you're learning about a new way or a better way from a book. It's like, how are you reacting to it? Is it like, damn, I have a lot of work to do. This sucks. Or is it like, right? Or is it like, wow, this is exciting. I can see how this makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I just like, I just like unlocked another cheat code. You know, it's like, where do you go with that? And sometimes it takes enough experiences of like, damn, this sucks. I'm not that, or or whatever, and feeling enough pain to eventually think about it differently. So eventually these things do work. So I love what you shared about like the first 5 years is like challenging to embody embody it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Why is that?
Um, so for me, when I started my journey into self-discovery, I started getting into all of that. Okay, so let's bring it back. So I started my first business venture when I was 22, and I got into personal development, and my first like guru was Jim Ron. Do you know who Jim Ron is?
Yeah,
Classic. Grandpa Jimmy. I call him
yeah,
the
Grandpa Jimmy.
Grandpa Jimmy. So I became obsessed with his stuff. And have you ever listened to his audio, The Power of Ambition?
No.
So good. It's old school, but it's really good. And it's just kind of like I loved how it was just like black and white, straight to the point, personal development. And for me, it was just like I thought initially, I thought, okay, the point of me getting better is just put my past in a little box and just throw it in the ocean and forget about it. Not not heal, not dig deep, not like heal from like I literally suppressed everything. And my mind was just like fuck feelings, work. Work, 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 work. So I was more of like do, have, then be instead
Mm.
of be, do, and have. So I was just like it
Uh,
was just all the opposite. Yeah. So for so long, like for literally 5 years, I was just hustling and hustling and working and working. And then a lot of things in my life would trigger me. And I didn't know why. And I would get emotional. And then also like with dating guys, like I was single for 8 years, but I was like dating guys at that time, and I was just like, oh my god, why am I attracting shitty guys, like all these things, like it's just like even friendships, why am I attracting shitty people in my life, even though I was on my entrepreneur path, I was still attracting people that were not good for me in my life, and just bad things, just like a cycle. The lesson kept reappearing because I didn't learn my lesson in relationships, financially, like things in my life. And then when I was like 26, 27, I felt like super lost. I was just like not happy. I was just like really depressed. It was really strange, and I couldn't figure out why, like what was going on with me. And that's when I realized like okay, like once I was like 26 all the way until like I was like 28, and that's when like I started opening up to therapy. And I started therapy in like 2020. I was 29, so I started therapy because I realized that I didn't allow myself to heal from all of my past trauma. I just suppressed everything, and I was just working and numbing the pain. That's basically what it was, because ultimately that's what it is. Like when you're working a lot, and everyone sees this differently, but like when you're overworked and overstimulated, it's kind of like you're numbing yourself from your own feelings. And I did that for a long time, literally almost a decade. And
mm.
when I started therapy, and I started like really hardcore therapy, and I started doing all these different practices, I started talking about my past, and I was just, everything was just like coming out. And then I didn't like it. So then I stopped therapy. I was like, I don't want to feel this. No, let's go
Mm.
back to work. Let's just work. So now, of course, after the workshop, I understand the meaning of really embodying self development and embodying the practices.
What would be, oh, I have a question. What would be, so when you're at therapy, and and the result of that was connecting you with your past, and that was uncomfortable or not desired. Now that you understand the methodology or purpose behind that, what would you tell yourself at that time so that you'd get it in the way that you didn't get it at the time? Or what was the ingredient that was missing at the time for that to like work effectively since it wasn't effective? And maybe there is no answer for this, and maybe this is why therapy is like not not always the answer for people. But that's what I'm curious about.
I think the missing ingredient was like not being opened to it, like having one foot in and one foot out. Like I was like, okay, I'm touching the water. It's a little cold. I don't want to jump in yet.
Hmm.
Yeah. The missing ingredient for me was just trusting and being open to it.
Yeah, like being open to being connected with that truth or with the past.
Being open to connecting, like, I guess really like going back and healing little Emma,
Hmm.
and like, yeah, and just like forgiving myself too. Forgiving myself and just forgiving and letting go, like really healing from it and letting go from the past in a way that I was able to do recently. I never got to do
Yeah,
it like that. Yeah.
yeah, wow. No, that's huge. It's incredible how I like how you use the word letting go. It's incredible like what like in the ways that we're suppressed or held back when we're holding on to something from the past that hasn't found its peace, or we haven't found our peace yet like with that piece of the past. Um and so, you know, I think on this topic, it's like the art of letting go is the road to peace and is the road to freedom because you cannot grasp tomorrow's dreams if you're holding on to yesterday's disappointments or if you keep, um, yeah, I don't know. There's probably a couple different ways to address that, but it's like the the feeling of that like really like light feeling when you suddenly like become equipped to be able to let go um is definitely like a really beautiful part of the journey for sure.
Yeah. And that correlates with relationships, whether that's romantic or platonic relationships. A lot of it, how people show up in interactions with other people, and if it's in like in a negative way, it's because of typically of like their upbringing or like their beliefs, you know. So it this is like it kind of correlates like with what you do, like that conscious awareness, right? And like relationships, especially in romantic relationships, you know, there are times where that I've experienced like in the past, you know, like growing up, being really young, and like, you know, that person carried baggage and I carried a lot of baggage. So it was just like this collision of just like anger and toxicity, and like there was no, oh, okay, this is coming up for me. Let's talk about it. It was like, no, fuck you. Like it's you. Like you, it's all you. And then that happened to me too. Like that I realized that too, like as I got older, and I'm like, okay, they're not the problem. Like it's like a like you get to a point where you think, okay, what's the common denominator here? You know, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm showing up in a way that I think it's that person, but it's also it's reality, it's me. I'm reflecting all of my baggage onto them, and they're reflecting all of their baggage onto me. So like with relationships and like conscious relationships, I truly believe that even in friendships too, like not just romantic, just overall, like two people or even a few people can like co-create something so amazing. And even like, for example, like me and my best friend, let's say we'll give that example. I've known her since I was 12. She doesn't like to be vulnerable, so I get to bring that out of her. And right now, especially now after, learning all these tools and all these different ways to communicate with people, from our workshop, I'm just like, hey, like this is coming up for me. Let's talk about it. And she's like, I don't want to talk about feelings. So I'm like, well, that's how it is in relationships. You're going to have these uncomfortable moments. And I think for me, I truly believe that there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable in relationships, because being vulnerable, you can be vulnerable in the most courageous way. You really can. And it's not about, because there's a difference between like weak vulnerability and strong vulnerability. So when you have like that strong vulnerability in the sense of like hey, let's clean the glass a little bit, like this is how I'm feeling, this is what's coming up for me, this is a story that I'm creating, like let's talk about it. And I'm not perfect, Chris. I'm still working on that. I'm still working on that, but it's at least it's there, and it's an opportunity for people to use that tool in relationships, so you can have like a very healthy dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I love what you said about vulnerability. Vulnerability is definitely a strength, like period. No ifs, ands, or buts. And yeah, maybe I like what you said about noticing it as a strength, and there can be like weak forms of it. I think in any case, like however you break it down, it's important to recognize for everybody that it comes from love, and one foot is planted in love when vulnerability gets to happen. And vulnerability is scary because you're showing, you're putting yourself at risk for pain. It's as simple as that, because you're showing who you really are, or you're showing what your heart really is or wants, and you're you're allowing yourself to receive an answer that might not be your desired result, which could be really painful. However, it opens up a profound, important doorway that allows the deepest points of connection and the deepest points of love and connection, and being able to understand. It doesn't matter if it's that could be with a friendship or with family members, of course, not just romance. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely a huge strength. And yeah, one of my favorite, I love the image that you helped just create in my head when you said like, I'm bringing my baggage from my end, I'm bringing my baggage and they have theirs. We're just like, you did this. And it's like almost like a baggage war. Like,
Mhm.
and even when the war is not going on, it's like you still have that. You still have your identity. You still have your ego's identity of like who I think I am. So as we progress together through this journey of conscious awareness, what inevitably happens is we start to learn that we have the ability to shift the things that we think we are, or we have the ability to grow into something and let go of things that are no longer serving us, aka baggage. So I would say like if you were to break it into like a level one, two, and three relationship, three being like advanced. Level one would be like um, my baggage versus your baggage. Like
Yeah.
let's like where are we at?
Middle
And it's
fingers in the
like
air.
yeah, middle fingers in the air. Like the things that matter the most is being right, and being safe. That's what matters at level one. Level two, what matters is more okay, we're on the same team. Like we got a little bit of baggage here, a little bit there, but like we've dominated it, we've overcome it. Like we're pretty good, and like if we see eye to eye, then like hopefully it works. And it's like this level two is about being prioritizing curiosity, but like prioritizing this sort of like friendship, and like kind of being comfortable with yourself, or being like really comfortable with the baggage, um and like some more curiosity comes in, but you still haven't figured out how to like really have your heart and soul into into the relationship because you haven't learned how to connect with it at that level on your own, from your own perspective with yourself, your relationship with yourself.
Hmm.
And so level three is like this level three, I'd call this advanced level because it's not even about the relationship. The relationship that is working so well is the result of what happens with you being in such great relationship with yourself. To be able to live this life of completion and not need anybody and like have this like loving, completing, unconditional happiness mindset. And you get to actually be like in love with life. And you just so happen to find somebody that's also in love with life. And now you get to be in love with life together, which is really what the definition of being in love means. It's individually being in love with life. And so it's not something that exists outside of you. It's not something that like level three is like no longer, wow, this person has my heart. This person has my love and now they are gone. So like I have no love. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
it only can come from within. They simply inspired the connection of love that you've already had within yourself. So,
I agree.
um, it's fun to, it's really fun to like, yeah, isn't it fun to like break down and like realize that there's actually a process for all this craziness and all this madness? I mean, that's
Hmm.
what I love about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you said. And I want to piggyback on the being complete part. Well, I agree with you. And also, want to add to that is I don't think you'll ever be complete because self discovery, self awareness, the work is never done. I call it a lifetime project. You're always working on yourself, but you get to that point where you feel complete. You truly love yourself. You know your worth. You don't really need anyone, but it's like when I, in a relationship, I'm like, it's the person that I'm with. I don't need them. I want to be with them. And like you said, I'm complete and I'm like my heart is full and I know my worth, I know my values. I'm loving life. I'm the fullest expression of myself, love, joy, all those things. And then I can meet someone or be with someone that we can co-create together, of course, but they love themselves. They're complete and then we become stronger together. So that
Hmm.
is, to me, that's like a really powerful relationship. And even friends too, like your friend groups, it's like you get to meet people that and have them in your group where they're uplifting you and they're amazing and they're like they're successful and they feel complete with themselves, and you get to add all of that into a mix of like a nice little soup.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's so beautiful to be in those synchronized relationships at
hmm.
that level where suddenly you have this ability to adapt and change and keep growing. The growing never stops. There's constantly
Hmm.
new levels. And eventually you can get to this way of being, this mindset to be able to shift and move together unlimited times. Like the potential is literally limitless because you've learned how to overcome feelings, understand that they just pass through, actually like commit to certain things based on your core values, living life that's in alignment with your core values and like being aware of it. So it's it's a fantastic, beautiful world that you get to create. Like the world is so amazing at that level. Why? Because you created it. So
Hmm. And
um,
it takes work. It takes work. It takes practice, and it takes time. It takes time to develop that. I'm sure for you guys that are listening, you're just like, wow, that's a lot of work, but it is. You get to do the hard things in order to become the best version of yourself, and it does require some hard things, but on the other side, it's just totally worth it once you're there and you overcome those barriers and you can get to a point where you just feel total peace with yourself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's really well put. And it's like so many people are like ready to put in the work. They're like, you know what? I'm listening to this. Where's the go button? And like, where do I go to? Because to be honest, there's a lot of different places to be spending your time and your energy when you're like ready to hit the go. And the last thing you want to do is exhaust yourself, right? So part of this is understanding like whatever it is that you choose, that is the right path for you. Plus, you have resources and amazing mindsets and people just like Emma who can also point anyone in the right direction.
Thank you, Chris. Yes. And I mean, we can talk about this for like 2 hours, but we've definitely made time. No, I loved this whole conversation and it was just packed with so much value. And Chris, you're so amazing and I'm proud of you and I'm so excited for you and your journey in your coaching programs. Now, one last question to finish it off. So I love to ask this to all of my guests. So what does inherent success mean to you?
Oh, good question. To me, that means being in the success as you're on the journey. And it also means, yeah, it means being successful because you're actually being present with the journey. So it's not something that is coming at a later time and it's like the end result, but but a way of being, to actually be in this way of being is what inherent success means to me.
I love that. Thank you. Well,
Has
thank
anyone
you.
else said the same thing?
No, it's interesting because everyone says something different. Everyone. I love it. I love it. I'm just curious to see what inherent success means to every single one of you. But
Yeah.
yes, Chris. Well, thank you so much for being a featured guest on our podcast. Guys, make sure to like, subscribe. If you found any value as well in this podcast episode, make sure to share it with a friend. And Chris, thank you so much for being on here. I'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.